Crime is sky high. People are getting murdered everywhere. They're cutting the throats of little girls and soccer moms just taking their Volvo XC90 to practice after practice. Oh, so but that's getting off track. You're hearing a ton of this crime stuff from Trump and Trump supporting Republicans lately. And at the same time, if you look at the data, crime is down. Crime of all kinds has been coming down in the US since before Trump was president. It's kept coming down since Joe Biden became president, and sometimes under record speed. But this crime is up stuff is really good fodder for MAGA rallies and Trump speeches. Trump often telling the lurid stories about specific crimes, sometimes involving immigrants, sometimes not. So we're going to be exploring the sick origins of these ideas. Trump didn't just pull them out of thin air. But before we do that, I do kind of want to say one thing. I don't know if I need to say this, but I want to get it on record. A country of 330 million people will have some crime. Just because crime is coming down, I don't want you to think that this in any way diminishes the tragic nature of the crimes that have taken place. I can see it now. Oh, David, you say crime is down. Don't you care about Susie who was carjacked? I do care. But in a country of 330 million, crime can be down but still exist. And we're going to talk about the broader crime trends, not whether Susie was carjacked, which is a tragedy regardless. It turns out that the origins of the crime is up nonsense comes from the same place as the more guns make people safer stuff. Does the name John Lott ring a bell? If it does, it's because he's been on this show before, arguing about what he claims is more guns making people safer. The same guy behind that story is behind the crime is up under Biden story. And John Lott has a long history of unethical behavior. Before we debunk crime is up, let me tell you a little bit about John Lott. John Lott is a pro-gun advocate who has been caught fraudulently claiming to have published a study in the peer-reviewed Econ Journal Watch, even though the journal rejected his paper. Fraudulently claimed that more than 94% of mass shootings occur in gun-free zones by counting each fatality over 20 years as its own shooting. 6 people died and 6 people injured in a shooting. Well, that's 12 shootings, according to John Lott. Pathetic. Falsely claimed that the mass shooting rate in Europe is the same as in the US, even though his own research showed that the US has double Europe's rate of mass shootings. Lott falsely claimed under oath that every country that has banned guns saw murder rates go up, despite the fact that, to pick one example, Japan's homicide rate fell more than 75% in the decades after it passed a series of laws banning firearms. And John Lott also got caught fabricating an entire survey on defensive gun use. When asked to provide the hard evidence of the survey, he said, "My computer crashed and I lost the data. Oh, my dog ate it." I could go on. There are many more examples, but I won't because we're here to talk about crime. But you get the picture about John Lott's lack of ethics and honesty. So now we get to crime and the last few months. In recent months, the Trump presidential campaign has featured John Lott at its press conferences. Trump himself has directly cited Lott's organization and research. Trump's data-based crime claims come predominantly from John Lott. Elon Musk entered the national conversation on guns and crime also by promoting a video about John Lott's work undermining the FBI, which was viewed more than 11 million times as a result. So this guy is having a major influence over the crime is up story that Trump and MAGA is telling. So now let's talk about the claims that John Lott makes about crime. John Lott has a 3-pronged approach to claiming that crime is up. First is claiming that in polling, Americans think crime is going up. We'll get to that in a moment, but understand one of his cited pieces of evidence for crime being up is that Americans think crime is up. We'll get back to that. Secondly, Lott has criticized the FBI's crime data, which shows that crime is down. This is a classic go-to move from the crime is up people. We will address it in a moment. And third, Lott points to a 2022 survey from the National Crime Victimization Survey showing a spike in violent crime. Let's deal with each of these one at a time. So first of all, Lott says crime is up because, as evidenced by Americans believing that crime is up. Okay, well, two important caveats here. First of all, Americans might believe crime is up because Republicans keep telling them crime is up and it's becoming a national story. So you might believe crime is up even though it's not because you're being told crime is up. Secondly, it's not a new phenomenon that Americans wrongly believe crime is up. There is polling going back to the 1990s where Americans believed crime is up, 2000s, crime is up, 2010s, crime is up. And crime has, generally speaking, been declining over that period of time. Americans regularly believe things that aren't correct. So the first prong of John Lott's story is not true. Now we get to FBI data. John Lott criticizes FBI data that says crime is down. And what Lott claims is that people no longer report crime because fill in the blank, right? People no longer report crime because the police, quote, won't do anything. People no longer report crime because the local police don't report crime to the FBI, so people no longer call the police. These are classics. We've heard these many times before. The first claim, that people don't report crime to the police, is undercut because in general, crime victimization surveys, which don't depend on police reports, they are separate data sources, crime victimization surveys overall, over time, mirror the decline in crime that the FBI data shows. Secondly, the claim that the police aren't reporting crime to the FBI has also been debunked. All major city agencies, I believe other than Tucson, Arizona, now fully report data. FBI data isn't perfect. It's never been perfect. It is not credible to suggest that FBI data is missing some historic surge in crime. So this now gets us to the NCVS, the specific single crime victimization survey that Lott says, look at that survey, it says crime is up. Now, I have no interest in deceiving you about any aspect of this. John Lott is correct that the NCVS data show in 2022, there was an increase in violent crime. But this has already been studied, and it's also very dishonest to point to that as evidence that crime has continued going up. Let me explain. When we look at homicide data from the CDC, it supports the FBI data that crime is down, not NCVS's claim that there's a spike in crime. When we look at crime data from the Council of Criminal Justice, it doesn't support a rise in crime, it supports a decline in crime. When we look at gun violence data from the Gun Violence Archive, it doesn't support the increase in crime claimed by the NCVS. It's just not corroborated anywhere. John Lott has cherry-picked NCVS 2022. And that gets me to another aspect of NCVS 2022 that doesn't make sense. Why is he focused on 2022? You can probably guess. The 2022 NCVS data was collected in 2021 and 2022. We're now in 2024, almost 2025. And John Lott is claiming, and MAGA is claiming, that this survey with data from 21 and 22 proves that crime is up now, that crime is up in 2023, that crime is up in 2024, which is the opposite of what we're finding. And this is 2 to 3 year old data. Very dishonest, and it doesn't make any sense. So what is this really about? You can probably guess what much of this is really about. This is about a few things, and they're all political. It's all about what is useful to Donald Trump and Republicans in trying to justify saying, vote for me and not her, not Kamala Harris. Vote for Ted Cruz and not Colin Allred, or whatever down ballot race we're talking about. It's about attacking so-called Democrat cities, suggesting most of the crime is in cities and it's Democrats' fault, so vote Trump. Of course, Democrats tend to run cities because cities have more Democrats. The reality is that high crime cities and low crime cities can be run by Democrats. Democrats tend to prefer to live in cities. The reality is that the crime rate is higher in rural areas that are more conservative. The reality is that the crime rate is higher in red states and red cities. For example, Oklahoma City has a higher crime rate than New York City. Oklahoma as a state has a higher crime rate than New York State. This is also about scapegoating immigrants. It's not just about scapegoating Democrats. It's also, which I should mention, I guess I don't want to ignore, that a lot of times it's about scapegoating urban liberal young men. They're talking about black people. Okay, you just have to be honest and understand what they're talking about. So that's one aspect, but it's also about scapegoating immigrants. And that's why when Trump during his rallies talks about crime, he will inevitably bring up some lurid anecdote about a specific crime committed by usually an undocumented immigrant. The reality that very much undercuts Trump's story is that documented and undocumented immigrants commit crime at lower rates than US born citizens. So it's also about attacking immigrants. And as a proxy, this is also about justifying contesting the election results, because among the immigrant crimes are voting crimes. Trump, in his ideal world, would convince people that an undocumented migrant crosses the US-Mexico border, rapes one person and kills another, and then goes to a polling place and says, "I'm John Smith and I'm here to vote for Kamala Harris." Of course, that is a caricature and completely ridiculous. But if you believe that story, when the election results come in, especially if it's a narrow loss for Donald Trump, and he goes, "It was rigged, and I need to do this and that and take control of voting machines and convince Brian Kemp to overturn Georgia," you might be more likely to go along with that, as Trumpists have, because they say, listen, the migrants are voting illegally and crime is up and all of this different stuff. So part of the motivation is lay the groundwork for a population that will be more willing to accept challenges to the 2024 election results. My suggestion is look up the data and refuse to buy into anything that is not justified by the data. And this gets me to, I love reminding people of this. I do not claim to be the ultimate source of truth. I've looked at all of the data sources I mentioned, various crime victimization surveys, CDC data, FBI data, local police departments. What I see is a continued decline in crime that's bigger than Joe Biden. It's bigger than Trump. It's bigger than Obama. It predates all of them. And yes, policy and economic circumstances can sort of move the needle up and down. There can be spikes. Are there more carjackings in a particular city during a 6-month period? Sure. But overall, what I see is the crime rate going down. If I found something different in the data, I would tell you. So fact check me. Unlike Trump, I am not telling you. Only I can tell you the reality of what's going on. What I'm finding is that Trump and MAGA are lying about the crime is up narrative. And the source of a lot of that fabrication is John Lott, a guy whose claim to fame is saying the more guns we stuff into public places, the safer everybody will be. That's the guy providing a lot of what I consider to be very unreliable research on this issue, providing that to Donald Trump. Look it up for yourselves. If you find something different, and I'm being honest here, if you find something different, email me, info@davidpakman.com. Tell me where I'm wrong. Explain to me where I can find in the data that crime is actually going up. And I will come here and eat one of my turtlenecks and ask for your forgiveness.